Had a little bit of a realization last night that I wanted to share with you guys. We learn history so that we can learn from history, right? And in Judaism, learning history is a huge part of what we do, not just when we celebrate the holidays, but especially if you grew up going to any kind of Jewish school, you learned our history year after year after year. And the reason for that is so that we can learn from it. We can learn the good things. We can learn the things that we should never do again. And what I realized is that for us to learn from history is to remember that over and over and over again, we survive and we thrive through the greatest odds, right? With Hanukkah coming up and knowing that the Maccabees were such a small group that won, and this happens over and over and over again. Like the story seems to always be the same, that people come after us, and even though we're smaller, we continue to win. And what do we see with the enemies of the Jewish people over and over again? That they come for us and they think, this is the time, I'm gonna do it. And they continue to lose every single time. And why? Because they're not learning from history. They're not learning the same history as us. In fact, what I've seen a lot is that they're learning a different history and being told that we're the enemy. Because what happens with the Jewish people throughout history is whatever the problem is, the Jews are the reason for it. So they'll shift whatever history, they'll shift whatever they have to say in order for it to be our fault. It's just, it continues to happen. And because they're not learning that history, and because they're learning a false history that changes based on whatever narrative they want, there's nothing that they can learn from, right? So they're just coming after us over and over again as our enemies, and they continue to lose over and over again. And I think at this point, I'm just used to the comments of people telling me that I don't know anything and that everything I'm saying, it's actually the opposite, right? It's gaslighting me whenever I share history, or telling me to stop playing the victim, but what about all the people who have died, right? Like, what about them? It's terrible, but that doesn't change history. It doesn't change the fact that on both sides of this right now, there are people dying. None of that changes. Okay, but that doesn't mean that history changes because you're angry. We can mourn the deaths on both sides of this war because it is terrible, but also acknowledge the facts of what is actually happening, and also acknowledge history and stop changing it because you're upset or you're angry or you're frustrated or you're mourning. History stays the same through all of that.